I was going to
Thank
introduce
you.
you, Theresa,
Oh,
actually.
I'll shut up then, let you. I didn't write anything down for you. This should be
No,
good.
I was just going to make something up since we're talking about tall tales. I was
Good.
going to
Go for it.
say I'm pleased to introduce Theresa Flynn. She is, been a Toastmaster for maybe 2 or 3 hours. And somehow in that 2 or 3 hours is a distinguished Toastmaster, served the district many times in many, many roles. I think maybe something like that. But Theresa Flynn is an outstanding speaker and is going to share a bit with us about tall tales. And I have a lot to learn because I'm a terrible liar. And with that, Theresa Flynn.
Excellent. Thank you. So you did mention the L word, lies, and the level of exaggeration tall tales uses can occasionally be considered lies. So that's going to be something that we'll all have to get through. Tall tales are not completely uniquely American, but we do a lot of it. They're exaggerated. They tell these bigger than life stories about solving a problem. They use a lot of exaggeration, a lot of whimsy. Frequently, there's a lot of big gestures involved. There can be accents. There can be unusual vocabulary. And that's why Tall Tales is an awesome contest for people to try. It's almost like, when you go to the gym and you do your regular workout, that's great. That's awesome. But then one day you walk into that different class or you try other machines and you get through some other goals the next time you do your normal workout. You're trying new muscles, you're trying new techniques, you're trying new things. And it's going to really help you develop the regular muscles for your boring work speeches. None of them are boring, I know. One thing I do want to share, I created this earlier. Speeches for contests are also very useful for gaining experience in pathways. So you are able to encourage people to get a written evaluation, just like every normal speech that they would do, and make sure that they get that credit in pathways. There are a few different projects that work really, really, really well with Tall Tales. And these are the ones that I have listed. There's stuff in levels 1 all the way through level 4, focusing on some of the specific components that we'll talk about for Tall Tales. And using these projects, number 1, you're getting credit. Credit's always good. Number 2, you're using some of the information in the project to make your Tall Tales speech even better. And that Tall Tales exaggeration and extra effort is really going to help you learn some of those components in the project itself. So it's like this really, really great network of, it's a Gordian knot of Toastmasters goodness. How's that? What are Tall Tales? You've heard them, when you hear them, but the hero of the story is a superhuman person. They're often bigger than life and stronger than you can imagine. They're superheroes almost. The hero believes they're common and ordinary, and they don't act like superheroes. They aren't Clark Kent. They're not Superman. They don't think they're anything special. They're just these solid people who are trying to get something done. And one of the things they're trying to get done might be solve a problem. And when they solve that problem with their superhuman strength, kindness, energy, creativity, whatever, the results can be really hilarious. Often, this character will have a sidekick, and it doesn't have to be a human. And the details of the story are exaggerated beyond belief. Nobody's going to believe this is the truth. So we've got some examples that we all might know. There's, Johnny Appleseed, Davy Crockett, Jim Bowie, Daniel Boone. Paul Bunyan is my favorite. I'm going to be calling him out a bit because he's a doozy. Slewfoot Sue and Sally Ann Thunder Ann Whirlwind. All of these different characters have different components that really captured the imagination of especially Americans. And we tend to really enjoy this exaggeration because, of course, we're Americans. We're bigger, badder, and more awesome than normal, and we're all about being amazing. So the list I gave was the traditional tall tales, but we don't just throw back to stuff that happened 150 years ago. We think about stuff today. And I'm going to make the argument that Chuck Norris could be a tall tales guy. Keith Richards, he's ripe for being exaggerated. The guy from the Rolling Stones, Older Than Dirt. So these are actual human beings, but even in normal culture, you see the exaggeration. Keith Richards is obviously not older than dirt because it's been carbon dated. Chuck Norris did not build the house that he was born in. It's a logical fallacy. You can't do that. But the fact is, you can say these incredibly crazy things about these people, and it's entertaining, it's funny. There's a persona that's been developed, and it's a lot of fun. One way people make their tall tales really memorable, in addition to coming up with a really creative character or a really unusual solution to a problem, is vocal variety, using an accent, using repeated delivery of something, like almost like a chorus in the story, or using some nonverbal cues. If you're telling a story about, Davy Crockett, you talk about the hat. Maybe if you're talking about Paul Bunyan, he's got his axe, you can use a prop. And he's also got Babe, the big blue ox, who was so huge that as she slogged through Minnesota, her hoof prints made the 1,000 lakes. Once you come up with maybe the problem that needs to be solved, then you can back up and figure out what character is going to be doing the tall tale. Currently, there are lots of different ways we can look at different challenges. And sure, you can go back and talk about, how Milwaukee was settled or something like that, something from hundreds of years ago. But if you want to do something current, you've got a rich opportunity for that type of thing. Just think about your everyday life. All of these different components are ripe for tall tales opportunities. You drive your kid to school, you wait 20 minutes to drop the kid off because of how the school has the traffic going. There's a problem. Super PTO mom can fix it. Tell us about her. If you're at work and nobody's coming in the office and you can't get anybody to sign for anything, that's a problem. Maybe you can come up with the super employee who's always at work. There are lots of problems that happen in real life every day, and coming up with crazy ways of fixing those problems is one way of developing a tall tale. Another opportunity is if you want to start with a character. If you know of somebody who's a little bit unusual, you're not going to want to base it absolutely positively on somebody who's going to be able to figure out that you just told a tall tale about them. But you can use some components of that person, exaggerate other parts, and it's a good start because, frankly, with a blank canvas, some of us can be really intimidated. Again, using really unusual language, stuff that might be an accent. One of my friends in another club that was doing this last year delivered her whole speech with an extremely heavy Southern Texas accent, and she's from Jersey. Using unusual nonverbal movements to make sure that you are non-verbally interesting, and you're demonstrating what's going on, adding to the exaggerated effect. And the language itself. The language can be used as what is part of the accent. So if you're from Texas, you might say y'all a lot more. But the other part of your language that you want to concentrate on is that exaggeration. Because if all you're saying is he was very, very, very fast and very, very, very strong, and he made a very, 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 very big hole in the back of the garage, that's a lot of varies. So rather than going that route, saying he could lift elements, he could lift elephants, he was so strong, and he was faster than the Acela out east. And sure enough, he blew a hole right through the back of the garage. It brings him to life a lot more because you're using better comparisons, you're using better vocabulary, and you're really painting that picture. So concentrating on your vocabulary, your delivery, and that nonverbal all can combine for a really entertaining tall tale. This is a very brief overview, but if people have questions, I'd like to maybe aim at where the questions are.
So we were exaggerating. What were the three elements again? I apologize.
So it's an exaggerated story.
Uh-huh.
It's so the hero is somewhat superhuman. There's something just extraordinary about him.
Okay.
The hero acts normal. He doesn't act like he's a member of the Marvel Universe. And there's a problem that needs to be solved.
Great.
So, and then those details then are just exaggerated to the point where nobody would believe that they're real life.
Thanks.
Okay. And exaggeration doesn't always come easy. It's kind of unusual. And sometimes it helps if you break down how the problem comes up, or you break down how the solution comes to be, and you come up with maybe some adjectives and then bump those up without even thinking about the story itself. Come up with components while you're not worried about the flow of the story. Take it out, segregate it, almost like a Mad Lib. If you focus on some of the vocabulary without worrying about the story itself, that might help. Yuri?
Yes, hi, Theresa. You mentioned Paul Bunyan. Of all the characters you mentioned, the only one I know is Paul Bunyan. The rest are, well, they're almost strangers to me. That aside, I know there's probably an element of originality to these tall tales. How far can a person go before? Because in my mind, trying to tie Paul Bunyan into their tall tales, somehow in my mind, it removes that originality. I know that it's probably good to take a look at a typical tall tale involving Paul Bunyan first, and then see what can be done in creating one's own kind of a story situation. Then to me, it's kind of while keep in mind Paul Bunyan, it's kind of best to not rely on the story involves him too much, and more focus on something that you come up yourself. I guess that's what originality means to me.
Mm-hmm. with so the list that I gave, Johnny Appleseed, Davy Crockett, Daniel Boone, Jim Bowie, Paul Bunyan, and the two ladies that, I'll be honest, I really hadn't heard much about either. These are all really good examples that people can use for research. I think it's really hard to make up a new tall tale for a character that already exists that would be fully original. It's not impossible. If, say, Paul Bunyan suddenly took a time machine and he was actually in Minnesota in the 80s, there probably are no recorded tall tales about Paul Bunyan working with Prince to make Minnesota funky. Davy Crockett, King of the Wild Frontier. He had a coonskin cap. My mom used to watch him on TV when she was a kid. You know, maybe he's finding new frontiers out in space. So suddenly Davy Crockett rides rocket. Hey, that rhymes. So it is possible to come up with brand new stories about these characters. But I wanted to specifically encourage people to check out some of these characters just to see how they get done. There's usually going to be a style of delivery. You know, it could be folksy, it could be old-timey. As I mentioned, one of my friends did hers with a big Texas accent. But as the storyteller, it's up to you to develop your persona of a storyteller and how you're exaggerating. You have to convince people that despite the fact that it's physically impossible, you're convinced this is real. Of course, none of them will be, because it's just too crazy. Sue?
Well, the tall tale can be a true story, exaggerated, right?
Right, but it's that exaggeration that people realize that's not 100% true. The exaggeration can't be so, it shouldn't be so subtle that people think the whole thing is completely true. So I can say, I made Thanksgiving dinner. I served 50 people. Well, to be honest, yeah, okay, I think I've done that once. However, I need to really up my game and exaggerate so people know that this wasn't real. I started the turkeys on Monday and I defrosted them. But what really helped was my assistant sous chef, who stayed up 4 days straight and didn't sleep a wink. By the time it was time to serve dinner, she was hallucinating. But my sous chef saved the day, and this is how she did it. And then you go off and talk about the craziness that happened. But that craziness has to be just crazy enough that people aren't going to believe it. It's just got to be that step beyond normal. You're delivering it straight. You're delivering it flat out. You're telling the story, but anybody who reads, anybody who hears you is going to realize, wow, this is crazy. Okay, it's gonna be almost superhuman. It's gonna be exaggerated, it's going to solve a problem, and it's gonna be really, really funny. Thanks, Susan. So one really great way that tall tales can really help, especially new Toastmasters, is by allowing them to just step out of their comfort zone for real. You're not just giving a story. You're not telling a story. You're not just delivering information. You're really putting some energy into it. Tall tales are going to be exciting events that really make you step out of your normal way of delivering information. So if you frequently deliver information in a fairly straightforward manner, Tall Tales is going to allow you to use crazy vocal variety, use different accents, use really unusual pitches, pace things differently, have different voices for different characters. And the vocabulary, again, is going to be really unusual. You can use what the speech patterns are going to be from your characters, whether it's a Texas accent or a Valley Girl accent or, you know, Canadian, all sorts of different ways. But all of these different ways of delivering that information, when your club member is done doing one of these crazy speeches, normal speeches are going to feel really easy. Kind of like if you step into the squat rack, those machines are a lot easier once you aren't depending on all your supplemental muscles to support yourself. It gets easy when you don't have to do all the craziness yourself. So even if people don't think they're going to be the District 35 champion of tall tales, encourage people to try, come up with something really crazy and just deliver it at the club. Another opportunity is that because this is so crazy, it's a really good opportunity to invite in guests. Hey, I'm giving a tall tale speech. Come hear me. Have your members post to social media. Have your members LinkedIn, post it to LinkedIn, and encourage people to invite and have an event. It's not going to be a foofy open house with lots of stories about all the benefits of Toastmasters. It's going to be a nice solid meeting delivering all of these different speeches. Okay. Susan?
You mentioned props, Theresa, once. I don't think I heard you say it more than once. In your experience with seeing contests like Tall Tales, how often are props used, and do the judges like them or think they're a distraction?
So I've seen props used in multiple types of contests. I've seen them used in, you know, the international as well. And it depends. You only get 1 minute to set up. So having a single mobile prop like a hat, it can really lead people into believing that you're that character. But trying to come up there with like a bench and a knife and something to whittle on, yeah, that's going to take a little too much energy. So you're going to want something that's straightforward that you can do within a minute and just get that done. The other challenge is that I believe the setup is going to be that some of these speeches are going to be virtual and some of them are going to be in person at some point down the line.
Hybrid, yes.
Hybrid. So being able to show off that prop both in your Zoom window and in real life is going to be something to worry about, to be concerned with. So if you have a teeny tiny little something that you count on it being in the Zoom frame, how will you change that when you're hybrid and you're actually in a room with other people? So these are all, I like having props just because if you're, example, Paul Bunyan with his big old axe, yeah, that's definitely a visual. But if you've got, that changeover for 1 minute, you can't have something too complex, and you want to make sure that it's visual in both ways of delivering your speech. Okay, Jason?
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I dropped the judges' criteria in the chat because judges' information is not secret, it is public. And I would encourage anyone looking at the contest to look at the judging criteria. To touch on Susan's question, there's nothing nothing positive nor negative about having props. The construct is all about the speech itself. So as a person that has judged a lot, my encouragement is do things that don't distract, that only help. Sometimes things can distract, and that's not necessarily helpful, because a judge can get focused on something that's distracting, like a background or like a thing that they bring up with you or that you set off to the side and they're wondering what that thing is because you only need it for 1 second of the whole thing, versus focusing more on the content, particularly in this, the idea of, taking that story and turning that story into something that has a solid beginning and an end, and maybe that beginning and end are plausible, but everything that happens in between are non-plausible. The way I think about this too, Theresa talks about using vocal variety, things like that. If I would do this, again, I'm not a contestant, I can't compete. I think of Joe Friday from Dragnet telling a tall tale, because Jack Webb actually was a pretty funny guy. If you actually read about Jack Webb, he did some really impressive things on Johnny Carson, if you ever want to look some stuff up with tongue twisters and stuff like that. But delivering something that's really outlandish in a really straight way is a potentially different way to approach it as well. It's finding that way that matches who you are with the story that you're coming up with, and then taking that story to the extreme.
Yeah, a very deadpan delivery can be really, really unusual and really ear-catching. One of the things it mentions on the judges form is that one of the criteria is, with the speech techniques, it's not just the verbal. There's obviously exaggeration, irony, puns, surprise, twists, humor. Slapstick is actually mentioned. So it does touch on some of the physical delivery. If you're physically demonstrating carting rocks, make sure that you know where your zoom window is, but also, be able to change it up once somebody makes it up to, division. So, okay. So just, being either, you can do the straight way, and especially if you're not used to straight, that can be really kind of a fun thing to try. But then you're going to really want to concentrate on the vocabulary and delivery to make sure that you're staying within the construct of what you're doing. You're not going to want to use a lot of likes or a lot of filler words. You're not going to want to use, a lot of insane nonverbal stuff if you're straightforward. So develop your own persona and go with it. So there's your persona and your tall tale character you're talking about. So it doesn't sound like there's a lot of questions. Probably the only other thing to think about is tall tales are 4 to 6.
3 to 5, I think.
3 to 5.
Yeah.
So make sure that the story doesn't go longer than it should, because they get disqualified at the area contest if they're too long. In the club, you do have the ability to approve projects that don't go the full 5 minutes. So you're still able to give people that credit, so they can still receive, a written evaluation, preferably not from a judge that they don't know who it is, but they would want that written evaluation and receive that credit throughout the different levels in pathways. Most of here, I'll put it up one more time, but most of the projects they're for all of the different paths. I don't think any of them are unique to any specific path. So they're good opportunities for just about everybody to do at least a speech or two. If they're practicing ahead of time, and then your club contest, and then the area contest, that's 3 speeches. That can be a level depending on when they started. So,
Teresa?
yep.
I just wanted to throw something in. I know that when we have newer members, and their speeches don't go, that long, we do an exit interview afterwards, and then it's hard on the membership committee and all that, but it's pretty good on weeding out the ones that can't do 5 minutes.
Well, here's their opportunity. It's 3 to 5. And as they get more used to developing those stories and that information, their speeches will get longer. So
That was my first attempt at a tall tale, so I have some work to do.
but the thing is we've all been in clubs where that's absolutely a thing. I think the thing that kind of tricked me off was membership committee, but I know that Menominee Falls kicks butt, so it wouldn't really surprise me if they had a membership committee. Excellent. So encourage even the newest members. Probably, I don't know if, okay, to be honest, I've had one member actually do a contest speech before she did her icebreaker. But in general, as soon as they've done their icebreaker, make sure they know that this is an opportunity for them to try something interesting. Jason?
Yeah, the other thing I was going to add is I think this is an important speech to practice as many times as you can with an audience, because when you add that element of humor, laughter can really throw off your plan. People may laugh in a different place than you laughed before, than you expected them to. They may not laugh in a place you do expect them to. So this is an opportunity to, it's not, while it's a short speech, it's one, in my view, it would be helpful to practice because of that time. The 3 to 5 minutes, it's very easy also to get long if you're caught off guard by unexpected or unplanned for laughter. And ideally, I would hope that there's some element of funny in a tall tale, because these, in my mind, is one of the reasons I picked them as program quality director for us to do is I wanted to hear some funny stories and hopefully get some fun back into some of the stuff that we're doing a bit. So,
and one challenge is at the club level, even if somebody practiced and they're like, oh yeah, I'm only at 4:30, I'll be fine, and they're hilarious and they have to keep stopping. One opportunity you have in the club level, so let your clubs know, is clubs can determine how to send people out as however they'd like. I think that having a contest situation gives them that added experience and makes them a better competitor for area. So as a hybrid opportunity, not Zoom in-person hybrid, but as an example of you want a contest experience, but timing can be a challenge, is making sure people know ahead of time if you're going to make a change to the rules in your club situation. And then don't call it a contest, call it a contest placement event, because you're aiming at the area contest. So if you hold a contest placement event and you agree that people will not DQ due to time, that's a thing, that's an opportunity. If you've got a club where you've already got 7 people who are trying to do this contest, you might not need to make that exception. But I've been in clubs where there would be 3 people competing and one person disqualifies and the other 2 can't make it for the area. It's not my favorite story. I was really sad about that. Cassandra, hey, happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday. Can I ask you to upload that document? I'm having trouble opening it.
Okay, it's a PDF. Sometimes it'll save directly downloaded.
That I tried, that didn't work for me. So if
Okay,
you've got any other suggestions, let me know.
Okay, otherwise we can email it.
If
Again.
you wouldn't mind, that would be great.
Cool. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Sure. It's basically like about 6 or 7 projects and pathways that align really well with doing tall tales and making sure people get credit for the speeches they're doing.
Oh, wonderful. That's great news. Thank you.
Menominee Falls is holding a speaker showdown using contest agenda, voting ballots, etc., to both the competitors and the audience, and not just the audience, but people who are going to be supporting contests moving forward. They have an unusual rule that they're really ramping up this year, that a lot of people who do a lot of other work for contests are not eligible this year. So that means we're going to all be working on recruiting additional people for contests and giving them that experience about how to handle the ballots, how to work the timing, how to, work Zoom, all of these different tasks at the club level is going to give people enough experience that they might be able to help at the area and division levels. So, okay. So lots to look forward to. Yuri?
Oh, yes, Susan, this is more towards your speaker showcase. I'm still somewhat muddy in understanding kind of where the contest showcase is set as a line cleanly slicing from actual contest, and using you as an example. When you do your speaker showcase, when it comes to timing ballots and all those elements, what will you do to indicate that it's not an official contest?
That's a good question, Yuri, and the answer is, in the beginning, even though we're following a contest format, we will have a briefing. In that briefing, rather than calling contestants to the side and briefing them on what their roles are, we're briefing the entire organization. So whoever is online, whoever's in person, they're going to know this is not a contest, but it's going to prep you for when you do participate in a real contest. But it doesn't mean that there aren't going to be winners. And you, all of your judges, you all are going to have official ballots that are being used at these 2 contests. You're going to fill that out, give us the bottom part. We're going to explain how it's done so that we can hopefully recruit some volunteers for contests in the future. As Theresa said, a lot of the officers who used to be just floating from district to district to help out can't do that anymore. So that means we can't call in, we owe ya anymore. So the idea is to explain it ahead of time, to let them know that contests are held this way, but we are not holding a true contest because I don't want to say we don't want to play by the rules. That's not true. We don't want to exclude people from having an experience that they might not get at the club level if it's held as a true contest. And we can explain for timing, for example, if you're 30 seconds over or you're 30 seconds under, you are going to be disqualified, by 1 minute, if you're 1 second beyond that. And in our contest, however, if you drone on and you go way over that 5 minutes, we're going to still time you. And now you got to cut off whatever time takes you before 5 minutes and 30 seconds. So we're going to explain those kinds of things in what we'll call the briefing. And our club vice president of education and I have a meeting on Tuesday to go over the format. She's not going to be the person who is the Toastmaster for the evening. I will be. So and it's nice having participated both as a contestant as well as a helper in contests for quite a few years. So any questions she's already asked me, I've had no problem answering through experience, but I want to make sure she knows, because if she's going to be at our club for hopefully a long time, and I'd love to see her as a competitor sometime. Does that answer, Yuri, at all?
It does. and still, like in my mind, there is this kind of a section where it's I guess what I'm looking is for almost the kind of a helpful I don't know, call it script, call it sample few paragraphs that will however clearly indicate, explain that this is not an official contest, because to me, Susan, what you're describing has kind of a shape of a contest, but you're not calling it a contest. And somehow that part is still remain through all the information I learned, it still remains muddy, because I'm trying to picture how a club who is whatever they end up doing, how their VP education is wondering, well, how do I phrase things? What do I say to kind of how do I shape all this? And maybe it's something we can get additional information on.
So there's
Yeah.
two things. One is that if you have a contest, according to Toastmasters, you use the contest rule book, period. Everything is very explicit in the contest rule book, and that's exactly what you do. And it's fine. There are clubs out there that have multiple people coming in, and they recruit heavily and bring in other Toastmasters to be judges. And it's a whole thing, and it's awesome. But I know that other clubs don't have the bandwidth for that.
Yeah.
The other thing on the other side is, once the club, whether it's the officers or the officers and the most likely participants, have a discussion and realize, timing could be a problem. Having exactly qualified votes might be a problem. Having, just all these other different problems. As a club, they decide, okay, we're not going to follow the rule book exactly, because that means that the one person who's trying isn't going to go if they're off time. Or we'll only have one voter, we'll only have one judge, or something like that. So instead of following the rule book, you're using the information from the rule book, you're using the forms from the judges' ballots and stuff. But because you're making exceptions, which are fine because you're in a club, you can't call it a contest. It's black and white, unfortunately. Right. Either you're doing a contest and you're following all the rules, or you're not following all the rules. You're still having a competition, but because you're not following all the rules, it's not a contest.
Right.
Yeah, Mark mentioned something about 13 people needed to run a contest. That sounds about right.
Right. Yeah,
So
I would.
Yeah,
I was going to, add, I would encourage you not to overthink it. It's either you're doing a contest and following all the rules, or you're doing something else. That something else could be doing everything but one of the rules, but that's something else. That something else could be, we're electing Theresa on our behalf of our club to compete. Or we're drawing straws and Susan drew the short straw, and since we drew straws, she was willing to compete. Anything in that range is acceptable. The club can choose their contestant in any way they so choose, but if they do a contest and call it a contest, they must follow all of the rules. If they don't follow one rule and they call it a contest, that's bad. The contestant cannot move on. You're better off, if you want to go through the motions of having a contest, is call it a showcase or a whatever. And then that gives you the flexibility if something goes wrong, that your people can move forward, as well as Mark points out, you need 13 people-ish to do a full contest. Many of the people in your club are not even eligible to be judges. They don't meet the criteria, potentially. By doing a showcase, all of your members can be judges.
At one point in the past couple months, 2/3 of the clubs in District 35 didn't have 13 people.
Right. So my encouragement is don't get hung up on that. In my assumption, the vast majority of clubs in our district will not do a full contest, because the requirements to do a full contest are that if you don't do it, your contestant cannot move forward.
So One suggestion is to make the announcement early okay, so I know you guys, a few of you guys are, like district area division type of people. In the club, as long as the VPE makes the announcement early and often that we are, working on getting together an event for people to move on to area, it's going to be like and then explain what's happening. It'll be like a contest, but except for this, maybe you're not going to you're not going to require being disqualified about time. Maybe you are not going to require everybody to be level 2 or above to be able to vote. Maybe, there's all these different exceptions that you can make up. But because you're making these exceptions, which are allowed as a club, that's fine, but it means you can't call it a contest. So explain to people that it will be like a contest, except, and then invite people to your placement event or your extravaganza or your Tall Tales Festival or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, the other thing I would add is at the club level, it's also about understanding where your members are and what your members want to do. For example, one of my clubs, we always start the contest season by asking who's interested in competing, first of all, who's actually interested. And then we go, not only who's interested, but who should we think be competing? And then how many people is that? Is that one person? Is it 2 people? Is it 5 people? If it's only one person, then we focus on helping that person advance and put the best possible area speech they can, because we can just advance that one person. If it's 2 people, we're likely to be able to advance 2 people. If it's 3, we need to come up with a criteria to pick between the 3 of them. That's the way one of my clubs approaches it. Before even saying we're going to do a contest or we're not going to do a contest, we look at what the club wants to actually do and then gauge our response to that.
And I think, I keep harping about the disqualification due to time thing. By keeping all members eligible to move forward, even though 2 people got higher, one person got the highest, another person got second highest, somebody else gets lower. If those 2 aren't able to make it, literally, I can remember that one of them had to go do something for his wife's job, and the other one was going to be out of town. And I DQ'd due to time. So we did not have a representative for that contest. And I don't want any club to do that anymore. I would love to see people moving forward and having fun and representing their club.
In your example, if 3 people, it's not called it's called speaker showcase. There are 3 people interested in Tall Tales. All 3 of them go 5 minutes and 35 seconds, which is above the limit that is allowed. All 3 of them, and it's not again, it's called a speaker showcase. What in that example, I'm concluding that there is some kind of a voting that's still taking place to determine which 2 of the 3 end up going to the area level.
And that's determined by the club. So if the club as a whole, or if the officers determined that you're going to be using the voting sheets, that would be how you would do it. You would use the voting sheets and tally things up just like normal. And that would give members of the club the opportunity to see what a voting sheet looks like, and a couple people to know how to tally things up, so they'll be eligible and available to help with the area contests. But the club can do whatever it wants. If the club really doesn't want to go through the rigmarole, they can just do a quick, maybe a Zoom poll. They can do, whatever they want. Yeah, Mark's like ranked choice voting. Yes, because we're Vermont. there's definitely options, because you're, as a club, you determine if a club wants to flip a coin, the club can flip a coin. However, you'd also want to, be mindful of, respect, integrity, and just focus on being supportive of all your members and respectful. So on the one hand, you're being a good Toastmaster, and on the other hand, you're not leaving yourself open to having somebody bring down the wrath of the rules on you. So if you have questions, specific questions as things come forward, Jason, Chris, Judy, and I, we're all definitely able to find the information for you, or you can go directly to Toastmasters International. But we would be definitely able to help figure out how to best support members in pursuing their dreams of Tall Tales excellence. Mark, I saw your hand.
Yeah, I was just, see, my problem is I joke around so much, people don't know if I'm serious or not. I was actually thinking for Susan for our thing, ranked choice voting, if it's easy to do,
Okay.
might be a better way so we don't have ties, and then, well, there's a tiebreaker. Yeah, I forgot there's a tiebreaker.
Well, ranked choice is literally what the ballots are.
Right.
Oh, there, okay, good.
Yeah.
Well, then we don't have to worry about it. It's already so.
So
But
you
even
can
in ranked
balance.
choice voting, there can be ties in the way
Yeah, sure.
Toastmasters rules does it. In the way
Well,
they,
the way math does it, there can be ties.
in
I'm going to
true
suggest
ranked,
we have a tiebreaker. So
right.
somebody who fills out a ballot that's not counted in any way except if there's a tie. And in Tall Tales, it would have to be something that deals with all three. If it's just the two levels, like let's say two people got first and second, same place, the tiebreaker would be the person who steps in at that point.
Yep. So it sounds like you've got a lot to think about. Not the least of which is encouraging members of your club and yourselves to come up with somebody who's superhuman and amazing, who's solving problems and telling that story for 3 to 5 minutes. Tall Tales is really exciting. I look forward to seeing some really great contests coming up. If I can, so Nicole asks about sending more than one person. It depends on how many clubs are in your area. Almost all areas this year probably have 2 per club, but I need to make that disclaimer that it depends on what area you're in. Jason?
Yeah, so I can say officially, because it is the program quality director that determines that. So the rules say 6 weeks prior to the start of the contest, I have to determine which areas are eligible for that. The rule is areas with 4 or fewer clubs in good standing can have 2 contestants. We likely will do that, but what exact areas I can't say officially until 6 weeks before because of what clubs are in good standing and all of that business. Because it has to be based on the number of good clubs in good standing. So there could be an area that has 5 clubs, but one of those clubs might not be in good standing, so they technically have only 4 clubs.
What day is the first area contest availability?
The first area contest availability is January 16th. So it's
so literally
December.
within the next week, you're going to be making that determination.
Yep, pretty soon. Yep.
However, looking at the numbers, most areas. So
Correct.
but he'll send out the official stuff.
Yeah, it'll be on the contest webpage, specifically on the district contest webpage, and the weekly news will say something about it as well.
Okay, excellent. It would be very exciting to see lots of clubs sending 2 members. So that'll be very fun. Yuri?
Yes, kind of moving in a different, away from the, what can, if someone asks how, I have no idea how to even begin to build out my Tall Tales story line, whatever it is, may be. I have no idea. What can I hear from one of us to at least begin to head in that direction?
Well, I suggested a couple of the traditional ones just to get an idea of what people are accustomed to. But I would probably say, be mindful of what happens during the day. What do you see going on? If you see that there's a long line at your barista, clearly you need a tall tale about a barista who actually get the lines going so everybody gets to work on time. And from there, you can just go crazy. It's really a matter of what kind of stuff people see in, their daily life or, in the recent past or whatever, so they can come up with something creative. I would not suggest basing it on an existing tall tale, but they're really fun to read to get an idea of what is being watched for. Okay. It is 7:57. We've only got about 3 minutes left. If people have any other questions, I'll still be here, but you can always email me. My name's Theresa Flynn, and I think you all have my email addresses. I'll type it in, but one other opportunity is, if you think about something, if you think about a caricature of somebody and that helps you think through something crazy, that's another way to approach it. So it really is about what approach works best. You can think about the problem, find a solution. You can think about a character that you want to develop and how they solve the problems. And you can think about how you are comfortable delivering stuff, and you can work it from there. Hey, Susan.
Yeah, just if somebody approached me from our club and said, I don't know where to start, Yuri's question, I would probably say, okay, I understand that. If you had a superpower, what would it be? And they might say, well, I'd be able to fly. Well, how would you use that? Where would you fly to? And just start asking them some questions. And that starts to build a story in their head that they may say, okay, I got it. They're going to take off, literally fly off. But almost any kind of a superpower, invisible, how would you use that? Maybe you could pop to the front of a barista line. If you were invisible, you never know. It can go any way at all. So I think just by asking some questions about their interests to tie them together.
I like that. And there's also definitely an opportunity for table topics over the next couple of weeks to get people thinking about super abilities, problems you see that might need solutions, that type of thing. So lots of opportunity for people to start brainstorming and coming up with something really zany and fun. Okay, it is 8 o'clock. My kid just got home, so that means my kid just got home. If anybody has specific questions, I'd be happy to, sit down. If anybody wants me to help with table topics to help people start brainstorming, I could even do that with some clubs. Right now, my work is insane, but I'm hoping that as soon as the snow flies, things will calm down because I'm not leaving my house then. So let me know if there's anything specific I can help with. Otherwise, it's almost contest season. I can
Yay.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Teresa.
Teresa.
This was
Thanks,
really
Teresa.
helpful.
Awesome job.
Appreciate it.
guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care. Thank you. Have
Thanks,
fun.
everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.